Hello, Guy Glidden. This is a set of one of two videos that I am providing to help you with the research process. The topic of this one is all about primary sources and secondary sources, and it's intended to help you figure out the difference and help you try to verify a primary source. I'll tell you why that's important. There will be a companion to this, which is a little bit more about a research question, which carries this a little bit further. So, and it's going to be entitled Sources of a Research Question, and it's all about a specific research topic, basically on the idea of should it be legal to display the Ten Commandments on or in government facilities. So, and I'm simply going to use that as a vehicle to get you started. So let's move on here. Why are we doing this? Well, right off the bat, your first assignment, the reflective essay rubric assignment, is all about, and the big question that probably will cause you the most difficulty is the issue of identifying and verifying two or more primary source materials. Of course, that begs the question. You have to make sure that you have to answer some questions about what is a primary source and how do I verify that I've got a primary source. Let's move on. Okay, and of course, I'm starting this because right off the bat, two documents that you're going to have easiest access to, Wikipedia and the text, and I've added a third text in here which you may also find, cannot in most cases be primary sources. And the reason because several of you, probably most of you, have bought the text. It's a good source of information, but it's probably not going to be able to qualify as a primary source. Wikipedia I mentioned because whenever you do an internet search, without question, the first listing that you will get in a list of hits is always going to be a listing of information from Wikipedia. So the temptation is, why can't I use those? Well, here are some questions. The text does not identify authorship. It simply provides the content. You don't know who wrote it. So it's pretty hard to be able to say something's a primary source if you don't know who wrote the topic, and that should be one clue right off the bat. Secondly, Wikipedia does not verify or identify sources in many, if not most, of its articles. You'll simply find some content there, and Wikipedia will be listing some things. And you don't know if it's your next door neighbor that wrote this or someone who's a real expert in the field. So that makes it a little bit difficult there. And also many texts and encyclopedias paraphrase or homogenize content. So they'll take something that someone wrote in an original source document and they'll simplify it, or they'll generalize it to fit a context. And that right away removes it from the concept of being a primary source. So you need to apply those standards to as many possible sources as you can. Also, here's a list of indicators of primary sources, and I would encourage you to look at those. So number one, right off the bat, for this course, you're going to be looked to find out if the person who wrote the source is a credible author or source of information on this topic. And we can look about several ways, but for example, if you are looking through your text or through Wikipedia and you keep running into the name of this philosopher or this expert in the field, and then you see an article that this person actually wrote, that probably gives a lot of credibility that this is a frequently quoted source and probably adds to the idea. The person who seems to have a lot of credibility with people in the field is a good source of information. Certainly, the author has to be clearly identified, and that's right away a disqualifier. Pardon me. If it's it looks like something that's interesting to read, but we don't know who wrote it, right off the bat, that disqualifies it. In a lot of cases, we're looking for something that would be a documented process of research. Now, we're not going to see a lot of research-related issues in this course because it doesn't lend itself, but through your entire graduate program and in real life, you're going to look for research sources. Illustration. Many of you come from teaching backgrounds, and we're always looking for better sources of information about how to teach reading, how to teach math, how to do lots of different things in your particular specialties. And one of the criteria is that people say you need to look for research-based solutions. What they mean simply is you need to go look at the research on the topic that's of interest to you and find out is there documented, transparent, available research that tells you a best course of action, and that's a good source. If it's data, you want clear description of how the data was collected. We see lots of data presented in everything, and certainly in this time of season, in the political hunting season, and people list data as though we should accept it simply because they say it's data. Well, not so fast. Tell me how you got it. Tell me how you collected the information, who provided the information, and I'll have a lot more feeling of support for your data. And finally, an overall good rule of thumb is the transparency of the process. By transparency, I mean openness. So when all else fails and somebody says, why did you think that's a good source of information? I can simply lay bare, here's how I researched it. Here's how I looked for the source of the person. Here's how I identified this person as a primary source. Here's how I located information by that person. So simply share your process so that it's an open process and therefore it's transparent. Now, is there any value for Wikipedia or the text? Well, yes, there is. There can be a lot of value. And here are 6 things right off the bat. Every search for information has to have a starting place. And if I'm researching a totally new topic, something I know nothing about, let me pick something in gardening. I know very little about gardening. My wife's a master gardener. I help her garden. I don't pretend to be knowledgeable. So if she asks me about something or something comes up, I've got to go to the internet or some source information. I've got to start someplace. I probably have to start with information sources that are simple enough for me to get a commonality with the language, and then I need to grow. Wikipedia provides background information. Again, and it's not all bad. It's pretty good. It's just that it tells you where to go further. The text in Wikipedia and other sources that are not primary sources frequently give you good identification of other source materials. What books should you be reading? What types of books should you be reading? What should be your sources of information? They're going to give you good lists of identifying authorities in the field. They'll give you a good list of names that you can look up independently of the text or Wikipedia to see what those people are saying. And finally, it is possible, and let me not skip over 5. Sometimes when you're starting to investigate a new area, you need a lot of help to figure out what are the questions I should be asking. You're not going to get good answers unless you have good questions. And I've got to get some background information before I even know what questions to ask. And finally, it is possible to find a primary source document in Wikipedia. Here's an example. Martin Heidegger, a person that I'm sure you've never heard of before, but he is a legitimate philosopher in the existential tradition, a rather interesting and controversial figure, which we may talk about later, but I won't take time to talk about him now. And I looked in Wikipedia about Dr. Heidegger, and lo and behold, the person who wrote the article has copyrighted it, has a name, location. I can check the credentials. Okay, so I could put that writing for Martin Heidegger, which appeared in Wikipedia, as a primary source document. So it is possible to find it, but that should also give you a clue of how you can go about the process of finding out if other sources are good primary source documents. Let me go through 2 illustrations. This is a primary source, and here's how I located this. I took the name John Dewey. John Dewey, I know from my readings in pragmatism, is a frequently cited source of information in this school of thought. So I thought, and his name comes up frequently in writings as a major contributor, so I went to the internet. I did some looking, I found his name, and I found, lo and behold, I could find on the internet a publication called Democracy in Education that John Dewey first wrote in 1916, and it's been renewed 2 different times. Here's the link for it. It is available in its full text on a chapter-by-chapter listing in the internet, and so apply the information. Is the source credible? Well, yeah. Is the process transparent? I know who he is. They were very clear to tell me how the document ended up there and how it, so I have all of the provenance that I need to identify that as a primary source document. Here's another one. You're all interested, and I hope by this time, all if not most of you have sent your Ross Barger philosophical surveys to me. Well, there is some research involved with this, and this is one reason why I selected this for this class. Here is a paper that 2 Bargers, possibly husband and wife, although I really don't know, and they delivered this paper, a paper in 1998 at the annual meeting of the American Educational Research Association in San Diego, and it's called Do Philosophical Tendencies Correlate with Personality Types? I do have a copy of that paper. As a sidelight, I'm interested in that because I was also at that meeting. Didn't know those people, didn't go to that session. That's not my area of interest, but I also delivered a paper at that conference. So that's the what that called the 3rd level of association. Not very close, but okay. Here's another example, and now this is documented research, and you could actually go to the internet and find the research. So those are 2 good examples of primary source documents. Okay, summary. You need the good source. The way to start is develop a list of questions to identify primary source documents and go down those questions and see, does your primary source document satisfy one or more of the questions? They may not satisfy them all, they don't need to, but you need to get some ideas. We need to understand the fact that the level of expectation for credible sources is going to change with circumstances. So I'm going to apply one level for this class. If you were going to another setting, let's suppose you were doing research on a process for where you work that might cost them money if they did this process. So understandably, whenever money's changing hands or people are going to commit time and effort, they might say, let's up the bar just a little bit to see that you really do have credible source information. And finally, what do you do if something gets challenged? And the key word is look at the transparency of the process. So if I go to class and you said, you know, Guy Glidden, I don't think you know what you're talking about. Your information about this topic is not very valid. The best thing for me to do is saying, that's a good question. Let me show you how I collected the information and you see what you think about the process. If you do that and put it out in the open, that's probably a good way to do that. Well, thank you very much for this, but this will give you one source of information, and I want you to look for the companion piece on that, which will talk about research on a specific topic.